Okay, so welcome to 365. With me today is Tom Morgan from Modality. Hi Tom, how are you doing?
Hi Mark, yeah, I'm doing really well, thanks. Yeah, you?
Great. Yeah, not bad, not bad. So you'll be talking a bit about your life in the dev world of Skype for Business. I know you've been on before, UC Day and before that. So I guess to kick off, really, what have you been working on since last October?
Yeah,
Anything interesting?
there's been lots changed actually, sort of since last year, and there's been lots of movements in new APIs around sort of web-based APIs, HTTP-based APIs. A lot of move to more sort of stateless, moving us slightly away from the older technologies and the more SIP-based technologies to more HTTP-based stuff. So we're seeing a lot more HTTP-based APIs, and that's sort of rounding out in sort of what you can do with Skype for Business as a developer, but also branching out a little bit, into things like Teams, and some of the sort of development opportunities there, and then the wider kind of bot framework and all that stuff as well. So it's been a busy couple of months with what's been going on.
So the bot framework that uses HTTP based.
Yeah, it does. No, it does. So the bot framework is kind of it's a whole ecosystem by itself, of which Skype for Business and Microsoft Teams are just one really kind of small part. The bot framework itself is under the hood, it's all HTTP, but actually you get these nice .NET wrappers, or if you want, you can do Node.js wrappers that Microsoft provides you to make it a lot easier to write with. But under the hood, it's all HTTP stuff now.
So have you written any cool Skype for Business bots?
Yeah, we've been doing some stuff with looking at bot framework and looking at what we could build there. What's really interesting with the bot framework is that because Skype for Business and Teams are just channels, the idea with the bot framework is you build something once using the bot framework, and then you can enable it on all these different channels. That means that you could write something and it will work just as well on Skype for Business as it will work in Teams. You don't have two code bases to maintain, but also it means that you can open up an application for things like Facebook Messenger or Slack or SMS, and that really brings in some of those sort of consumer flows, and so you get that kind of business to consumer flow. And we've been looking at scenarios for sort of contact center help and customer services, especially where the customer is using something like Facebook Messenger or Skype Consumer, and the advisor is using something like Skype for Business, but they're both talking to each other through the bot framework, and the bot framework is sort of mediating those flows. And that's kind of exciting because you've not been able to do that before.
So a bit like Push Doctor then. Yeah,
and that's really interesting actually, because healthcare is a whole kind of interesting sector that is really ripe for telehealth and telecommunications, really ripe for unified communications, and Microsoft are really interested in that space, and they're putting a lot of effort into it. In fact, they've recently released a whole set of templates for free on GitHub that are aimed at the healthcare market, and it's an interesting way of doing things. So because I said a while ago that Microsoft have been working on all these different APIs, these new HTTP-based APIs, and they're based around Office 365, but they haven't really had time, because everything's moving so quickly, they haven't had time to build out these APIs completely to to 100% with all the features that they know they're going to want and that people are going to want to use. So rather than concentrating on each API at a time and building those out, what they've done is concentrated instead on scenarios and use cases. So the first real kind of thing they've really concentrated on is this remote advisor scenario. And healthcare is a really interesting type of remote advisor scenario, that kind of doctor-patient interaction. And so what they've done is just built out the APIs just enough to support that scenario. And then they've created these templates to showcase kind of how you would then do that, how you would do that, and how you would build that into a solution. So that's been interesting to get into. We've been really involved in those healthcare templates as they're changing and as they're evolving, and as Microsoft are adding things to them. Certainly we've been very kind of on top of all those changes. Modality have been doing a lot with those changes. We're very much into that kind of market and very interested in that and doing interesting things there.
So aside from the obviously audio video piece, can you make bots intelligent? So can you leverage like cognitive services and Cortana and stuff in the cloud?
Yeah, you absolutely can. And actually there's been an amazing, this is kind of slightly away from UC, but there's been an amazing amount of work and R&D and stuff done on machine learning and on AI in the Microsoft have invested a large amount of research in the last sort of 10 years or so. And that's just now, that's now beginning to show. And it's showing as really easy to consume AI. So it ties in really nicely with the bot framework. But the most obvious kind of use case is a facility called LEWIS, which is the Language Understanding and Intelligence Service. And what that gives you is the ability to take a sentence that someone has typed in or said and turn it into like an understanding, like an intent. So if I say, show me pictures of Charlie from last Tuesday, the LEWIS artificial intelligence is good enough to take that sentence and break it down into an intent of I know I need to show some pictures, and the parameters of that are Charlie and last Tuesday, and you can pass that information then to a program and have it do the right thing. And all the different nuances of different languages and the way we construct sentences and stuff, a developer doesn't have to worry about that anymore. That's all kind of sorted out by the artificial intelligence. So that's been really interesting, and that's really pushing the way bots are kind of expanding and taking on a lot of these different roles.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Microsoft done a lot of work in the background to get us to this point, and people like yourselves are starting to dip your toe into the world of creating a bot and seeing what the art of the possible is. But what do you think is going to be the first killer bot, as it were, the one that really makes a life-changing impact?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I don't know, we're seeing some really amazing things coming out. So just the other week, there was a really impressive kind of combination of all these different AI skills coming together as a translation service that you can download, and you can download this today for PowerPoint as an add-in. And you can add it into your presentations so that when you are giving your presentations and you are talking, the add-in will take your speech, it will send it off to the cloud, it will do decent text-to-speech analysis to either give you subtitles, but it will optionally also translate it into a number of different languages. It will also give you a URL that any of your participants, anybody watching your presentation, can go to and then see a real-time translation in their own language. Now, there's years of research in artificial intelligence tied up in all of those different flows, in the text to speech, in the way, turning it into subtitles, and in the language translation. The fact that it can all be condensed down into a single PowerPoint add-in that Microsoft are giving away for free, I mean, that's huge. That was unthinkable like 5 years ago. So
yeah, I mean,
that's really interesting.
Does the translator in PowerPoint play the audio in your native language as well, or is it just subtitles?
It's just subtitles. We've seen there's some interesting R&D that's happening, like, because it's a similar technology that's going into Skype Consumer at the moment, or that's in Skype Consumer at the moment, where it translates what you say into text. There are some R&D programs that Microsoft are doing around doing the audio as well. And what's really interesting is there's a good video actually where they do a translation from one language to another, but when they play it back, they match the frequency of the original person's voice, so it sounds just like the original person is saying it in the right language. It's really impressive actually.
Freaky.
Yeah, it's really good. Like it's really impressive. But
so do you reckon that'll come to Skype for Business in the near future?
Yeah, I think. I think it will. I think it's a natural fit for some of the stuff that's running Office 365 and some of the stuff that's running out of Azure. We're seeing some interesting things happening with. I want to say it's called Sway. I think the replacement for the Office 365 video stuff. It's Stream, like Stream. Thank you. Not Sway at all. Stream. Thanks. where those videos that you upload, it will also transcript them and give you a searchable transcript. So once you've uploaded the video, you can just search for a keyword, and if that keyword was spoken at all in the video, that will come out. Things like that seem a very natural fit for a Skype for Business in the next couple of years, to be able to take all your call recordings and do translation and transcripting and stuff like that. No idea, like I don't have a magic 8 ball, but that seems like a sensible kind of fit for the future.
I think if it came to conferencing especially, that'd be quite powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
Multinational conferencing.
So
definitely. In terms of what's available in Skype, obviously nobody's talking about on-premises these days in terms of anything really. So I guess you're really focused on what you can do in the cloud. So Microsoft have released a few APIs specifically for Skype in terms of the trusted API as well. So can you give us a bit of a brief on what that is and what we can do with it?
Yeah, definitely. So you're right, the Trusted API is new, and it is Office 365 only at the moment. It's kind of limited at the moment. It's still still in preview for quite a lot of its functionality. But you can use it to create meetings. You can use it to manage those meetings as well. And you can do a couple of other kind of call control style things like listening and moving people around conferences and stuff. And that's really, again, it's coming back to that, playing to the strengths of these different scenarios. Lots of people want to make these remote advisor scenarios at the moment. So the first thing Microsoft did was the ability to create and manage meetings, because in order to kind of do that remote advisor thing, you need to be able to meet in a private meeting space somewhere. So being able to create meetings on the fly in code is a core requirement of that. And it ties in nicely. But actually, we're not saying, you're right in that the Trusted API is Office 365 first, and that is where all the attention, if you like, is at the moment, is on these 365 first services. But the old APIs, the old SDKs, they're not going away. For lots and lots of people, on-prem is still where they are right now. And actually, for a lot of things you want to do today, at the moment, the on-prem SDKs are still the only way of doing it. If you want call recording, if you want ethical walls or compliance solutions, if you want to change how SIP traffic is routed round to different people and impose barriers on that, or fork off different routes and stuff, you still need those on-prem SDKs, and they're not going anywhere. So actually, the kind of the job description is expanding. It's not changing.
Yeah, no, I understand. So at the moment, the Trusted API is kind of limited. So do you have any information on what the next piece is going to be coming out?
No, you're right. Again, because they're doing it by scenario, it's kind of looking to those different scenarios. There isn't a sort of set roadmap, because what they're doing is catching up all the other APIs as well to match. So that you've got the web SDK for joining without a client. So if you want to join from the web, we're seeing that being dropped into lots of interesting places now. You see it coming to Yammer, and you see it being integrated into other places as well. And there's the mobile SDK as well, which allows you to write iOS and Android applications that can join meetings. So you can see how all those three nicely kind of work together, where you've got the Trusted API, Trusted Application API to create a meeting, and then you can join it from your mobile app or from the web. So you can build together a really nice experience from that. But no, in terms of features, there's no announcements exactly on what's coming. It's all a little bit unknown. We wait and see.
The contact center giants are eagerly awaiting the time when they can dev in the cloud, right?
Yeah, there's lots of calls for things like contact centers and things like call recording as well. The kind of classic scenarios and solutions, and I think Microsoft know that. They're blockers to moving to the cloud. So
yeah. I mean, you mentioned there you got SDK on iOS. That's a recent thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually been around for quite a long time. It's probably been getting on for 12 months now, but it's been a relatively quiet announcement because it is really limited. Like, literally, the only thing you can do is join a meeting as an anonymous participant. You can't log in. You can't change content. You can't see contact list. You can't change present. You can't do any of that stuff. You can just join an anonymous meeting, or sorry, just join a meeting as an anonymous participant. So really, again, it was only created to enable that particular scenario. I'm sure it will build out over time, but they're going to be led by business case scenarios. So
sure. And obviously, have you played around with the Teams API or Microsoft Graph as it is?
Yeah, so some interesting things with Teams. There are supposed to be some more developer things coming for Teams soon. That announcement was made, but been pushed back. It was supposed to come in kind of July window or sort of June window, I think end of June window, but it got kind of pushed back a little bit. So we wait for that. But in the meantime, yeah, there's some really interesting things you can do with the Graph API. There's Teams support in Graph. It's currently in beta. But you can do things like you can create channels of Teams and you can post into channels as well.
I remember seeing your blog post about doing a HTTP push or something.
Yeah, exactly. You can do that. You can do that. And that's interesting. And actually, there's really good developer support in Teams. So that's a whole kind of area that I'm now kind of involved in and like burying my head in. Oh.
Yeah, sure. No worries. I think just had a bit of a dropout then. My hotel Wi-Fi. No, that's fine. You probably carried on talking. It was probably okay. We'll see. Did it drop out your end or not?
Yeah, your audio started cutting out, so I didn't quite get your response. But I got enough of the question to like start to answer it. But it's probably okay. But so my last bit was probably okay, I think. But you might have to redo your. I don't know. Play it back and see. But
yeah, okay, yes. We'll cut it out. So. Cool. So is there anything else in the Skype or dev world, UC related world, I'd imagine, in terms that we haven't covered?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole side of development on Teams that's really interesting, and that is kind of we're now really deeply kind of involved in. There's actually really good developer support for Teams right out of the box today. There's a number of different ways you can integrate information, because Teams is all about bringing all the information together and having a conversation about it. So there's really good developer support for bringing all that extra information in from different places, your line of business applications or different data sources, bringing it all together in one place, making it easier to bring that information in. So there's a number of different development routes for Teams as well. And then, bots are really big as well at the moment. So kind of both of those things combined gives you a really rich experience for being able to get the right information you need very quickly, bring it into Teams, being able to have a conversation about it.
What's your number one wish as a developer that you'd hope to see Microsoft release?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm excited about the real-time translation stuff. I think that's really interesting, because that's a real problem that you and I face, certainly everybody faces, but you know what it's like going around giving presentations. I'm often aware that we all give our presentations in English because it's the de facto language of technology. But so many more and more people now, you go to Europe and everybody is trying to translate in their head, and like you're losing 50% of their brain cycles. And I have no idea how people do it. I can't imagine how you could translate in real time in your head and still like be fully on. But people do it, and I'm amazed. But it's,
I think it's definitely a skill. I struggle with it as well because I try and convert it into English, so I lag behind, and you just lose track, don't you? So I guess you just you either got it or you haven't. I definitely haven't got it. But do you reckon translation service will come to email as well? Although I know it's like an older tech now, but
I think it will. I don't think email is going to go away anywhere. And I think more and more Cortana and bots will. So the Cortana is a really interesting subset of bots in a way, or superset of bots maybe. There's interesting things that Microsoft are putting out. They're trying different things. There's a cool Cortana kind of personal assistant for booking appointments I blogged about a couple of weeks ago, for kind of working out the best time for a bunch of people to meet. You can kind of CC in Cortana and leave her to go away and do all the hard work, which is kind of cool.
Do you ever see the apps that we know today, like Skype for Business app, Word, Excel, all that type of stuff, Outlook even? just disappearing and just becoming baked into Windows 10 as native OS functions?
Yeah, I think maybe they might, in a kind of a sort of licensing and presentation sense, in that you might buy a single service, and it just, you sort of get Office as part of Windows, and you don't have to buy the two things separately. Under the hood, I think at a technology level, as at a developer level, they'll probably stay fairly separated. It'll be interesting to see more and more. They'll get more and more cloud-based. I think you'll probably see them move into Graph a little bit more. So you can go seamlessly from, I don't know, using the Graph API to query who your manager is in your company and what your calendar looks like, and then seamlessly use Graph API to create a new Word document, taking a template from somewhere else, add in the information you need, and email it out. And you'll be able to do all that on a single set of API calls that as a developer is easy. You won't need to necessarily interact with, like the way you'd have to do that today would be using, APIs for Word that are on the machine and stuff like that. Anything like Microsoft are trying as much as they can to get away from developers needing to use SDKs on machines, because it then makes it very hard to move that stuff over to mobile phones and onto devices and ultimately onto Cortana. You want to have the same experience everywhere. So you want to be able to go to a computer and say, do this workflow thing, but then also just pick up your phone, invoke Cortana, say the same thing, and it just happens because all the hard work is happening up in the cloud. I think that's the future. That's the,
Is Cortana going to come to iOS and Android to replace Siri and whatever Google is?
I don't know. It's going to be a bit of a battle, I think. I think the potential's there. I like the long-term vision Microsoft have for Cortana as a mediator of different bots, as a way of grouping together bots and invoking different bots. So if I ask Cortana to book a hotel room in Glasgow or whatever, I know that Cortana will do the right thing to find the right hotel and then connect me through to the bot for that hotel. We're starting to see that already, actually, with bot framework bots. You will now show up in Bing search results. And that's interesting, because you'll get a much better answer than if you can search for something and then immediately take your question and talk directly to a bot that represents the company or the service you were looking for. You'll get a very targeted response to your question. You'll get a very accurate response to your question. So that's interesting.
No, that's cool, isn't it? And you can search for Premier Inn or Hilton or something, and bot comes up, say, "Hey, have you got any availability? Yes, book me now."
Yeah, exactly. So I did a blog post about that a couple of weeks ago, around using bot framework bots and having them show up in Bing search results. So there's now a thought stuff bot that if you search for thought stuff, you get the thought stuff bot pop up, and you can ask questions directly to that.
Cool. Cool. Awesome. Well, before my network bandwidth runs out completely, and completely fails for the second time.
It's struggling there.
Yeah. So, but anyway, thank you very much for coming on. I hope this time, this take, it worked. So
cool. Hopefully so. Cool. Thanks very much, Mark. Cheers.
Cheers, Tom.